In 2023, brave members of the FDNY responded to 268 lithium-ion battery fires, which caused 150 injuries and 18 deaths. 17 children were injured and one was hospitalized after an e-bike caused a fire.
Let me turn on the mic and try that again. The new system will absolutely be able to not only track lithium-ion, but other emerging technologies.
Ensuring that climate change is being factored into all fire preparedness.
Climate change is in the forefront of our mind. Right now, we're in a bit of a circular issue. The U.S. does get most of its lithium-ion batteries from China, South Korea, and Japan.
Lithium-ion, it's hard to say.
I'm probably not saying it well, but he could say it better.
I'd like to give a shout out to my home district.
10%, 20%, 30%.
Sounds like a good idea for another subcommittee hearing. The purpose of this hearing today is to examine the various hazards that our nation's first responders face daily and will allow members to better understand the particular dangers posed by lithium-ion batteries. In recent years, new technologies have come with new risks. Fire departments across this country have reported how the increasing use of lithium-ion batteries has diminished fire safety in major United States cities. In fact, injuries caused by lithium-ion battery fires involving e-bikes or e-scooters have increased by 1,000% over the last 5 years, just in New York City alone. In 2023, brave members of the FDNY responded to 268 lithium-ion battery fires, which caused 150 injuries and 18 deaths. In January of 2023, 17 children were injured and one was hospitalized after an e-bike caused a fire in a building that housed a daycare back in Queens, New York. In November 2023, an e-scooter caught fire in a Brooklyn home, unfortunately killing a grandmother, her son, her grandson, and injuring more than 12 others. With the increased use of e-scooters, e-bikes, electric vehicles, and mopeds, stories like these have become all too common. I would now like to formally introduce our very talented panel of witnesses. Dr. Lori Moore-Merrell was appointed by President Biden as the U.S. Fire Administrator on October 25th, 2021. Chief Dan Flynn was appointed Chief Fire Marshal of the FDNY Bureau of Fire Investigation in 2021. Mr. Stephen Kerber is Vice President and Executive Director of the Underwriters Laboratories Fire Safety Research Institute. Chief John Butler serves as International Association of Fire Chiefs President and Board Chair, as well as the Chief of the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. I now recognize Dr. Moore-Merrell for 5 minutes to summarize her opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman. Let me turn on the mic and try that again. Good morning.
Chief Flynn, thank you again for being here today. Just last week, the FDNY shut down an illegal lithium-ion battery business in Queens that was building battery packs for individual battery cells and replacing old lithium-ion batteries, which is in violation of the fire code. Can you explain to us and to people listening at home how you are inspecting and tracking which companies are making those unsafe batteries?
Thank you for that question. We have a robust inspection program within the city. We team up with our fire prevention inspectors on a daily basis and go out and inspect every location that we become aware of that is selling, servicing, leasing, renting of these devices. We believe we've inspected every single one within the city that we are aware of. We've conducted over 500 of these inspections just last year. Many of these businesses we've actually inspected several times. So when we do become aware of them, we get out there and inspect them immediately. We've urged the public within New York City to call 311, which is our non-emergency number for concerns from the public. And we pledge that we will get out there to inspect and address their concerns within 12 hours. We've also utilized our field units, our firefighting units, to help in those inspections.
What are the patterns that you're seeing as to the cause of these deadly fires?
We are tracking that. We are trying to track the brands of the devices that are failing most often in the city. Unfortunately, when we do conduct our investigations, many of these products are damaged beyond recognition, and a lot of that goes into interviews with the owners of these devices.
Our fellow organization, UL Standards and Engagement, has worked diligently over many years to create voluntary consensus standards that cover many of these lithium-ion battery-powered products. So the standards are there, but they are voluntary. So by moving forward with the act that's currently in play right now, would force CPSC to make a mandatory requirement in order to make sure that these devices are in fact meeting these standards and being certified as such.
Can you give an example of the types of national data that would give a better picture of where and why these incidents occur?
Thank you for the question. There are over 30,000 fire departments in the United States, and some have resources that others don't. In the community I'm in, we're able to track fires related to lithium-ion at the company level and input into our local database. We have the abilities to do that. Many other places don't. Many other places don't have those resources, and therefore even more the reason for a national information system such as NARIS.
How does the U.S. Fire Administration plan on tracking lithium-ion batteries statistically nationally? The statistics nationally, rather.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. At present, we are limited to media scrapes. This is how we're learning. I mentioned in my testimony, our antiquated INFIRS system does not have the capability for tracking. And so local fire departments, much like Chief Butler just referenced, are tracking them either as a hazardous material incident or an electrical fire. And so there's no consistency because the data system can't contain it. So the new cloud-based platform that's being constructed now will be onboarding several departments for testing within the next couple of weeks. We will onboard an additional 50 departments in the summer, and then opening up for the nationwide fire departments to self-onboard to the new system. The new system will absolutely be able to not only track lithium-ion, but other emerging technologies as they arise, so that we can better understand any fire risk associated as these emerging technologies that are going to make our lives better, but they also may carry fire risks that we don't understand. And so we will track them in the new system. They'll be able to be tracked straight from the scene. We'll be able to upload videos or photos right from the scene as well, so we'll understand better about the products into the new system.
The U.S. Fire Administrator, can you share with us that ensuring that climate change is being factored into all fire preparedness across the nation?
Absolutely, sir. Climate change is in the forefront of our mind. What is happening across, as you pointed out earlier in your opening statement, wildfires in Louisiana. This is a first. We're seeing the changes, everything from the atmospheric rivers in California to wildfires in places that have not historically experienced them. One of the things that we note is that we continue as a nation to build toward risk. In other words, we are clearing fire-prone lands that have burned for hundreds of years, perpetuating the vegetation. And yet today we're clearing them and putting structures there, people there, often with one way in and one way out. And so as we build toward that risk, we must take a stand on building codes and look to the science that we know can make a difference.
What is FEMA doing to change its process to get equipment and systems onto the authorized equipment list and into the hands of first responders?
That's a great question, sir. As you know, PPE, or the gear, turnout gear, is a priority 1 level for the Fire Act grants, and so it already remains there. One of the issues with having PFAS-free gear is that we need the manufacturers to actually produce it. Often the manufacturers don't produce until there's a demand, and the demand has not arisen yet because most fire departments are held to purchase based on an industry standard. And so the NFPA standard that directs and is over the gear itself still has a test that the test requires PFAS in the gear in order to pass the vulnerability test for the gear. So we're working to change the standard so that we can have the departments who have to comply with the standard be able to purchase in order to drive the demand for the manufacturers to make the gear. So right now we're in a bit of a circular issue.
The FDNY has a ship simulator on Randall's Island that I understand is utilized throughout the year. Could you tell me more about the facility, including how many firefighters and first responders can be trained at this facility annually, and whether the number of firefighters trained annually can be increased and the costs associated with training?
Certainly. Thank you for that question. My condolences to the community and the loss of those brave firefighters in that shipboard fire. We do have a shipboard simulator at Randall's Island. We have many different simulations there. We even have a fuselage of a plane. So we train on all potential threats at our fire academy. We also train our probationary firefighters there. We train about 400, close to 400 in a class. So it's a very, very busy facility, but certainly we can try to address any cross-training.
How are the new mandatory regulations that the Consumer Safety Protection Bureau would be required to issue if my colleague to the left of me, Congressman Torres's bill, is passed?
So if I may, sir, we do have an answer to that. The U.S. does get most of its lithium-ion batteries from China, South Korea, and Japan, but there's a huge unregulated market within the U.S. that poses the challenge to regulators, for sure.
Right, and that's where I wanted to go next, because something struck me in the meeting that we had, Chief Flynn, which is that a lot of the danger of these lithium-ion batteries comes from those who purchase them messing with them or rejiggering them, mostly to allow them to go faster, which provides a whole nother set of problems that we deal with in New York City, but it also increases the danger. Is that right?
Absolutely. By opening these up, it creates a tremendous danger. There's really no regulation for people to repair them. So they're engaged in extremely dangerous practices. We've had several fatalities related to the repair or reconditioning of these devices throughout the city. The incident that you mentioned on Madison Street a few months ago, we believe that they were working on batteries at that location as well, which killed 4 people tragically in Manhattan. It's important to note in that incident as well, there was no fire that extended to the apartments of the people that were killed there. The smoke from these devices is so toxic that if it reaches your apartment, you're immediately overcome by this toxic gas.
I'll start with Chief Flynn. Talk to me about the risk of fires in EVs and how that impacts your organization and the impacts to other motorists and communities.
Thank you, sir. We investigate approximately 7,000 fires a year. 2,000 of those fires within the city are car fires. So we inspect every single car fire that occurs within New York City, and we have really not seen fires in EVs up until this point. We're aware of incidents across the world with EV fires, and we train to extinguish those fires, which is extremely difficult, of course. So we are aware of the issues in other areas, but specific to New York City, the fires we're really seeing that are killing our citizens in New York City are fires related to the batteries that are powering the micromobility devices.
Chief Butler?
When a fire engine is dispatched to an EV fire on a roadway or elsewhere, potentially we could require a whole lot of water, a lot of high volume of water to suppress any stranded energy in the batteries or the electric vehicle. And also a protracted amount of time on the scene. So the converse of that is a community that doesn't have a fire engine or its crew in that community in its primary role and responsibility. So there is a community ripple effect with regard to EV fires. We still don't know what we don't know, and requiring a lot of water, a lot of resources for a protracted amount of time.
Why does it take so long to put out fire with a lithium-ion, it's hard to say, battery?
Dr. Kerber and others could probably get more in the weeds with regard to the science, but it's a reaction that creates heat and fire and flames, and that reaction is almost perpetual at times. So that stranded energy feeds upon itself. I'm probably not saying it well, but he could say it better.
No, Chief Butler, you're starting out very well. So it's a lot of energy in a very small space. And all of those cells, if one goes into thermal runaway, it then heats all the cells that are touching it, and imagine hundreds, if not thousands, of these cells together. When we put them in an EV, we highly protect them. So we typically put them in a container and bury it as low and into the middle of the car as possible and encase it so that we don't have other problems. That's what makes it so difficult to get water to in order to cool it off. And then as lithium-ion batteries go into thermal runaway, they also produce oxygen, which allows them to burn in this closed compartment and release these toxic gases. The fire department can't get to that. Okay. And we don't want them tearing it apart either because of the high voltage concerns.
Definitely some things we need to think about. I'd like to give a shout out to my home district, to Goodfellow Air Force Base for their the progress that they're making on these. They're the DOD's only joint fire training center. They train hundreds of fire professionals each year and are doing a great job.
But if we in Congress do nothing or do too little, is it fair to say that the crisis will simply keep getting worse?
Thank you, sir. I remember meeting you out there at the Grand Concourse after that fire. It was a terrible tragedy. Luckily, nobody died from injuries at that fire. That was one device that took out an entire shopping center. It was a huge fire. A fifth alarm, for just to put it in perspective, that's the maximum that we have. Right? That's the most resources we can bring to a scene. We have regulated it within New York City, and we've seen many violations of that law that we put in place locally. We cannot regulate devices that are coming into the city from the surrounding areas. So
ultimately, there's no substitute for federal legislation.
Yeah, so we really need that legislation enacted to stop those products from coming in, not only to our city, but to cities around the country.
I feel strongly that Congress should act swiftly to lower the de minimis threshold for imports in order to prevent poorly manufactured lithium-ion batteries from saturating the American market. Does anyone have an opinion on the de minimis threshold?
I would say that it's, as high as it is, has certainly allowed a number of e-bikes and e-scooters to come into this country underneath that threshold and create fire safety problems that we're dealing with today.
Are firefighting organizations asking for more assistance through our Assistance to Firefighters grant and staffing for adequate fire and emergency response programs to prepare for these type of fires?
Yes, fire departments across the nation are eager for training. And so, as I said to you, we're still in a very much research and understanding stage. Every incident provides additional information. Our colleagues in research, even sitting here at the table, Dr. Kerber and his team have been researching. They provide training online. We have enhanced courses at the NFA, as has been noted, in training in tactics and understanding scene safety. But each time that the manufacturers, particularly with the new micromobility products and even the EVs, they evolve, they change. So the training has to keep up. So every time we learn something, it's like we have to change the training. And so all of these things are causing departments across the nation to need constant training in this regard. So yes, they are asking for that, and it is primarily understanding and training.
What type of research is FSRI conducting on the negative health effects of lithium-ion battery fires, and what can Congress do to help?
Thank you very much for that question. As we speak right now, the FSRI team is conducting a series of EV fires at our laboratory in Northbrook, Illinois. They spent the last 3 weeks burning different manufacturers' EVs, understanding the size of the fire, but more importantly, working with NIOSH and other industrial hygiene experts to understand what are the chemicals that are coming off of these vehicles, at what concentrations, and what possible health effects could there be with this new challenge. So that data has been gathered over the last several weeks. It will now be in laboratories being analyzed so we can understand what is in that smoke. And then from there, we'll work with some toxicology partners to figure out what could the possible health effects of this be. And then from there, we start developing methodologies and practices with the fire service so they understand how to protect themselves, what equipment they need, and all of the downstream impacts that we need to prevent.
Share with me the mechanism or process that they're tested before they're put into equipment, toys, cell phones, bicycles, motorcycles, cell phones, hoverboards, are they inspected? And if so, to what extent?
So one of the things that you heard Dr. Kerber and Chief Flynn talk about was the voluntary standards that they are tested to today. So UL has a standard. There are standards that the testing, and they are labeled. The unfortunate part is that often those labels are being fraudulently applied. And so we have some fake, and I know FDNY has certainly encountered some of that. So there are voluntary standards. What we need is a mandatory standard.
So by what percentage would you say are products that are being used today in America that have not been UL tested, but are on the products on the shelves in the homes of American people right now at risk? Would you guess? Percentage?
I'd have to look into that. I know that
Can somebody just, I mean, are we talking 10%, 20%, 30%, 1%?
Americans have hundreds of products in their home that bear UL marks.
Okay, but I need to know, because now you've distinguished for me that we have some that are really tested and some that are voluntarily tested. I think the American people, someone here, if you can't get it today, I would really like someone to report back to us some notion and some idea of what percentage of components that we've deemed to be dangerous may be on the shelves and in the homes of American people.
Do you think that the mandatory regulations that would arise out of the passage of this bill could be done in a way to make it, to require certification of lithium-ion batteries that are more difficult to tamper with than right now?
Absolutely. I mean, you can write any requirements into the standard and it goes through the consensus process, everyone agrees with it. Absolutely, there's ways to reduce the chance of that happening.
That's, all right, that's helpful to understand that on the front end that there is a way of reducing the possibility of tampering.
Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.